Grace and peace, beloved of God. It's Apostle Cheryl L. Richardson, and I'm back with another broadcast, Shatter the Silence. And of course, our focus is on domestic violence on today. We are grateful for everyone who takes the time out of their schedule. We're all so busy to tune in with us and spend this hour or so with us, just raising your own personal awareness. And we appreciate if you would share the video, because as you all know, I'm not good at remembering to say that. So um, we are grateful for your taking the time to raise your awareness regarding domestic violence. And I am Apostle Cheryl L. Richardson. I am the overseer and visionary for Lion of Judah Global Impact Ministries. And I am the founder of the closed Facebook group, Dominion Over Domestic Violence. I am an apostle in the Lord's Church. I am a mental health professional and a military veteran and a survivor of domestic violence. And so we are here with you today. We want to do all that we can to encourage you and to raise your awareness and to empower you so that you know how to best help those around you and even yourself. If you have a history of domestic violence, or if you are in fact at this time ensnared in a domestic violence relationship yourself. Again, I am Apostle Cheryl L. Richardson, and we welcome you to this broadcast in which we'll be talking about the abuser, a wolf in sheep's clothing. The abuser, a wolf in sheep's clothing. Hey, Lori, how are you? Thanks for joining us. So I'm going to give you all a few minutes to join and to share, because I'm not going to remember to say it too many more times, as you know. So I appreciate you all helping me out. If you would share throughout the broadcast, if you want to do a watch party, however you choose to get the word out is fine with us. We know that we cannot do this alone. It's going to take all of us to get a handle on this monster and to get ahead of it and bring it under subjection. Amen. So again, today our topic is the abuser, a wolf in sheep's clothing. And let me just begin by sharing this, that one of the most effective strategies that the enemy uses is deception. And he'll deceive us in terms of enticing us to accept his definition of things, enticing us to view ourselves through his lens as opposed to through the lens of the Word of God, because the Bible declares that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. All right, and so anything that conflicts with that is not of God. Okay, if we look at ourselves and we denigrate ourselves, or we minimize who we are, we dumb ourselves down, then we're in direct opposition to the Word of God, because the Bible declares that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. We're amazing. All right, the Lord created us, and he thinks he did an amazing job, and we need to just agree with him concerning his opinion of us. All right. Do we have shortcomings? Absolutely. Okay, but that is why Jesus went to the cross, right? So he went to the cross so that we would have a way back to God, knowing that we would get stuck at times, knowing that we would go our own way at times, but he stands ever ready to reconcile us back to him. And so it's because we know this, and it's because we have experienced this ourselves, that we know that there's a way out of anything that binds us. And so our ministry, the foundation of our ministry, is to assist people in getting unstuck when they find themselves stuck. Hey, Electra, how are you? Thanks for joining. Please share. So everything that we do is geared towards getting people out of stuff, right? And so when I was going through officers training school in the Air Force, my classmates gave me a nickname, and they called me Harriet Tubman, because they said I was always getting people out of tight places. And so I've always been anointed to do that, even as a young child. And it's a core part of who I am and who God has made me to be. So imagine my surprise when I found myself stuck, okay? So I know from personal experience how horrific it can be to be ensnared in a situation in which you are not valued, in which you are disrespected or demeaned, in which you are, you're being pressured not to be who you are, to be less than who God created you to be. And what we want people to know is that it is possible to come up out of that, even if you find yourself in that kind of a situation. Okay. Hey, Kelly. So today we're going to talk about the abuser, a wolf in sheep's clothing. Now, going back to what I initially stated about deception being a strategy that the enemy employs rather effectively, is because we fail to understand what God has already said about us. And if we do understand it, we fail to consistently embrace it. And there's a temptation to go along with the enemy's definition of who we are and who we are capable of becoming. All right. And deception is a foundational pillar. It's the foundation of domestic violence in any kind of abuse. Deception, because you can't have it without it, right? You can't have it without it. You can't openly be abusive and mean and nasty and without somebody intervening. Not openly. So the deception is necessary. Deception is necessary in order to even position the victim into a place where they're now isolated from anyone who would be a support to them. All right. So it's important to understand how we're defining a thing, what definition we're accepting for things in our life, for who we are as a person, for what our purpose is. And it's important that we understand the role that deception plays in an abusive relationship of any kind. Okay. So again, we're going to be talking about the abuser, a wolf in sheep's clothing. Now, oftentimes, victims come to realize that they are entangled in an abusive relationship, but because they've accepted the enemy's lies in the beginning of the relationship, and because they have overridden, and if you're a believer, if you're a person of faith, if you're a spiritual person, then you have most likely, okay, inappropriately applied spiritual teachings to your situation, which rather than freeing you has caused you to become ensnared. Okay. And so the enemy doesn't really go out of his way to try to make us believe something that's completely counter to who we are as a person. If he can just manipulate what we believe, manipulate how we define ourselves, manipulate how we apply our spiritual belief, he can ensnare us unbeknownst to us. Okay. And so 9 times out of 10, that's what he does, because he's not interested in expending a whole lot of energy, quite frankly. He's not investing all that energy. Why do that when he can just use how we are against us? Okay. So that's typically what he does. And if you don't take anything else away from what I say, the rest of this life, hang on to that piece. Hang on to that. Okay. So oftentimes, when a victim realizes that they're in an abusive situation, they are in so far, they have invested so much from a practical standpoint, financially, emotionally, physically, and if sex is involved, then sexually, which really, really complicates things. Okay. You've got all these hormones crashing around. You're now accepting the enemy's definition for who you are and what your life is supposed to look like and how you deserve to be treated. Right? When something happens that crosses your border, your boundary, and it's so egregious, it's so severe that you can no longer lie to yourself about the fact that you're being mistreated. Oftentimes what has happened is you have invested so much. It could be that your career is connected to theirs. It could be that your status in society is connected to this relationship being a success. It could be financial dependence, emotional dependence, codependence, okay? So there are very practical reasons for why people find it difficult to, number one, accept that they're in an abusive situation, and number two, extricate themselves from it, all right? And so awareness and knowledge is key, all right? So we've invested all of that. But I submit to you today that the fact that you've invested a lot is not a good reason to continue to hold on. It's not a good reason to continue to invest. Okay, that's an irrational thinking. It's illogical thinking. It just is. And what makes it dangerous is that most of the time these situations escalate to a place where now physically you're being abused or mistreated. And physical abuse, the majority of the time, left unrestrained, right, will escalate to the point of homicide. And we know that if there's a weapon in the home, if there's a firearm in the home specifically, that the chances of there being a homicide is increased by 500%. Okay? So it's important to keep that in mind as well. So it's not unusual for the victim to then look back, right, and begin to demean themselves. Well, how did I miss this? I thought I was smarter than this. I have an undergrad degree. I have a graduate degree. You know, I'm an attorney. I'm a doctor. I'm a therapist. I'm a psychologist. I'm a psychiatrist. I'm a police officer. I'm an attorney. You know, I'm a working mom. I'm a teacher. I'm a stay-at-home mom. But I'm a smart person. How did I get in a situation like this? And so this is what I want you to understand from a spiritual perspective. There's this belief system among spiritual people, you know, that humility means that I don't think anything of myself. And that's not what humility is. And when the Bible talks about the need for us to be humble, it's not talking about self-loathing. That's not what it means. So we can't hate ourselves, right, and please God at the same time. We hate ourselves. So now we're hating what He's created, and He's already declared that it was amazing. And so we're debating with God about how amazing His creation is. All right, we're amazing because He said so. That's it. That's all. Okay, and we have to grow to a place where we can just accept that we're amazing. Are we flawless? No, we're not. That's why we need Him. Okay, but we are amazing at the core of who we are. All right, now. For those who are thinking, well, the Bible says that, you know, we're born in sin and shaped in iniquity. Absolutely. And He gave us a way out. And so consider everything that the Word of God says when we talk about that. All right. That same Bible says we are fearfully and wonderfully made. So that gets it. That gets it. Okay. It trumps any thought that we have to the contrary. Okay. Now, so you can look back and start blaming yourself, which furthers the enemy's mission and not your own. It furthers the enemy's mission, and it doesn't further you in terms of pursuing your God-given purpose and your God-given destiny, because again, you're embracing the wrong definition. Okay, it's important that we educate ourselves, and no matter how spiritual we are, we have to understand the system in which we work, right? We've got to understand the system in which we function so that we can navigate it successfully. Okay, now most abusers, most of them, okay, present as charming. Think back to your situation and what first attracted you. They weren't raging and acting like a lunatic, right? They weren't raging and acting like a lunatic and cussing everybody out when you first met them, because that probably would not have been appealing. Okay, so typically they present as very confident, very well put together, very unbothered by the things that seem to bother other people. You know, very calm and in control. They always have an answer. They are warm, and maybe they have this great sense of humor, and they have this way of just disarming you, right? It's fine to be disarmed if you're among friends, but if you're in a room with your enemy, you don't need to be disarmed. You need to be armed. Okay, so they have this way of disarming you and making you feel comfortable and like you've known them your whole life. And, you know, maybe you can talk for hours and hours and hours, and they seem to get you, you know, and they don't hold your past against you. And, you know, just amazing. Just, they're attentive. Listen, they smell good. They smell good, right? They dress well. They may look just the way you like for your partner to look. They have all of that. Okay. Maybe they have a job. Maybe they're between jobs. Maybe they're an entrepreneur. Okay. They have goals, they have potential. They're accepting of you, right? They don't apply a whole lot of pressure to you. They're very attentive. All of this is called love bombing, okay? All of this is called love bombing. And we've done discussions about love bombing in the past. You can find it on social media. You know, whenever we do these things, we post it on social media and we leave it up. We don't take it down, okay? Because we want you to be able to share it, revisit it, learn from it, embrace what you're learning, all right? So they present as charming, and people a lot of times are just naturally drawn to them, right? Just naturally drawn to them. Now let me just say this, especially among people of faith. There's a tendency to take your pastor, your apostle, your bishop, your Sunday school teacher, the church mother, the deacon, okay, the head of the finance committee, to take their word for the character of another individual. Hey, Dr. Jen, to take their word for it, right? To take their word for it. And I submit to you, and this is not going to be a popular statement, but those of you who know me know I don't shy away from making unpopular statements. We are charged to speak the truth in love, so that's what we are going to do. Okay, so here's the deal. It doesn't matter who it is if you're not confident of the character of the person who's making the recommendation, okay? Because sometimes people will recommend other people because they want them to get a fresh start in life. And yeah, they've made mistakes in the past, but they're turning it around. And they don't even have any evidence that things are being turned around. They just need to believe that the thing is being turned around. And so, yes, he used to rob banks. Yes, she used to be a gangbanger. But, you know, that was a couple years ago when they come to church every Sunday and they tithe and they do this and they do that. None of that has anything at all to do with what they're doing after the benediction. Okay? And so I'm telling you that people in churches, in ministries, in synagogues, in temples are given horrible advice for purely selfish reasons. Because people want to be matchmakers. Because people want to see another person have a fresh start in life or whatever. Okay? But at whose expense is my question? At whose expense if they haven't vetted this person properly? If they haven't done their due diligence, okay? If they can't be completely honest about the character of the person that they're referring you to be engaged in a relationship with, okay? So I'm saying to you, Apostle Cheryl Richardson is saying to you, okay, do your due diligence regardless of who recommends this person to you. It doesn't matter who it is. Do the homework. There's too many ways to find out who people really are in this day and age. There's too many ways to figure out what a person's history is. Why is this important? It's important because, again, especially with people who perceive themselves as spiritual, or who say they have a relationship with Christ, or they have some spiritual entity that they submit to, that we absolve ourselves of our responsibility to do our due diligence. We have to do our due diligence. It is our responsibility to know who we are getting involved with, okay? We're not supposed to sit around and wait for the clouds to roll back and for Gabriel to blow his horn and tell us something. Do the due diligence, okay? You can find out whatever you want to know about a person for $5. $5 will get you a background check, okay? Am I saying that? That's exactly what I'm saying. You need to know who you're dealing with, and this is why. And I'm going to talk to you some more about some of the things that are indicators, okay? And I want you to keep in mind what I've shared so far regarding how we're defining a thing, all right? Now, most abusers initially present as charming, engaging, they smell good, they wear their hair the way you like it, they've got goals, and they are passionate about the same things that you're passionate about. They laugh at your corny jokes. Whatever it is that is especially appealing to you, the enemy will present it in that package, okay? So if it looks too much like what you want, you need to be a little suspect anyway, okay? People are naturally drawn to them, which means that they typically come with a full cast of flying monkeys already, which are people who kind of do their bidding, people who vouch for them, haven't spoken to them in 20 years, but they're still vouching for their character. They have no idea what this person's been doing, okay? 85% of reported abuse cases, in 85% of reported cases, the abusers are men, right? And in 5% of reported cases, the abusers are women. And it's important that I'm emphasizing reported, because what we know is most men, when they experience abuse at the hands of a woman or in a same-sex relationship at the hands of another man, they do not report it. They don't report it because it's difficult for them to get support. They're often ridiculed. They're not provided shelter. And so they're just left out there on their own. And so they keep it to themselves, okay? And domestic violence is an issue in same-sex relationships, regardless of how you may feel about them from a spiritual perspective, all right? No one deserves to be abused. No one deserves to be abused. God created all of us. He created all of us, and no one deserves that treatment, okay? So in same-sex relationships, it's an issue. In heterosexual relationships, it's an issue. In familial relationships, it can be an issue as well. So you can have domestic violence between siblings, between parent and child, between child and grandparent, okay? And so this is a very, very serious issue. There are a number of variables that if they are present, they increase the likelihood. It's not a guarantee, but it increases. Now, why is this important? If a person has a history of abuse in their family or in their past, this is what a person of faith or a person who considers themselves spiritual will do with that. They'll make it an excuse. They'll make it an acceptable excuse, and they'll make it a reason that justifies them staying in a very unhealthy situation. And it's important that we understand that when we do this, that is not God telling us to do that, because that's a misappropriation of Scripture, okay? It is us telling us to do that. And we need to get to the bottom of why do we need to tell ourselves that? Why do we need to make an excuse for behavior that is just completely unacceptable? So, a history of abuse in their family or in their past does not mean that a person will absolutely become an abuser, but it increases the likelihood, okay? It puts the option on the table, because this is a behavior that they have observed, grown up with, or experienced, or been subjected to, and on some level it worked. It worked until the victim left. But there's a period of time where it appeared to work, okay? And the abuser, if they have a history of physical or sexual abuse as a child, that is key. And as I've stated, it's not a guarantee that they're going to be an abuser, but it puts the option is clearly on the table because they've been exposed to this, okay? Substance abuse. Substance abuse in the history or even currently increases the likelihood, because this is an individual who has given over control of their faculties to a substance. Lower economic communities, according to studies. However, I have a problem with that. I believe that the wealthy have greater access to means of hiding it. The wealthy have they have money, right? They have connections. They have a means of making things go away, things not getting into their record, etc., etc., etc. So they have the means of arrest history. Now, let's talk about this. A prior criminal arrest history. This one for sure, folks in church. Hey, Sharon, people absolutely will make an excuse. Well, he robbed 5 banks, but that was 5 years ago. He got sentenced to 4 years. He only served 1. He has a short fuse, but you know, he's trying to rebuild his life. We will use a person's history as an excuse. This is what we do. Thank you, Lord. We turn them into projects. So then our project becomes, we're going to help them get stabilized. We're going to help them get established. We're going to help them. Okay, so at that point, the roles kind of become confused, because are you being their mother? You being their sister? You being their partner? Like, who are you being when you're doing all that? Who are you being? Who are you to this person? All right. And the thing is, we need to know who a person is once they become who they are, not while they're on their way to getting there. All right. Not while they're on their way. So church folk especially, there have been countless instances, tragic instances, right, where men have been imprisoned for murdering their first girlfriend, their first wife. She may have been pregnant, she may not have been pregnant, murdered her, got sentenced to prison, comes out of prison, okay, and some apostle or some bishop or some church mother's child meets them and decides that they're going to be forgiving, be understanding, and not be judgmental, right? And they connect with a person who has murdered a previous partner, the mother of their child. Maybe she was even pregnant at the time. And we excuse that because deception, because so we excuse that. Now we engage with this person and expect them to do what this time? What are they going to do the next time they get upset? If they've already murdered someone that they were supposed to have loved, okay? I submit to you, you need to leave that alone. You need to leave that alone. Okay, so usually when we hear the term domestic violence or intimate partner violence, what do we think about? We think about pushing, we think about pulling hair, we think about punching, biting, kicking, right? Hitting with a closed fist, slapping, strangulation, some kind of physical aggression that is over the top, okay? And at its most severe, we think about domestic violence, homicide. That's what we think about. Those of you who have joined, thank you for coming on, and please share. It's important to note that oftentimes a batterer will acknowledge, and this is a ploy of the enemy, and it may not even be a conscious choice on the part of the batterer, okay, or the abuser, but they will often acknowledge and share with you, probably within your first one or two conversations. It's like they're vomiting, and they're going to tell you all this horrendous stuff to see if it scares you off. And if it doesn't, they have a real good chance of pulling you in, okay? Because a healthy person would say, okay, you killed somebody before. I'm good, okay? An unhealthy person or someone with something to prove, they want to prove that they're not judgmental. They want to prove that they're forgiving. They want to honor God. Everything is over the top, right? They feel compelled to resist the urge to disconnect. They feel compelled to resist the urge to disconnect, okay? Anytime we feel compelled, forced, with some like anxiety and some, that's not God. God does not get anxious, okay? So, what the abuser will do, we're still talking about an abuser, a wolf in sheep's clothing. What they will do is they will confess to you that they've done these horrible things in the past and that they've been struggling to get, stabilized, and that no one understands them, and they've just always just wanted someone who loved them for them and wouldn't hold their past against them and would understand that they were sincere, And so they'll tell you, I have a history of this. I had a violent relationship, but it was in response to him or her doing this or that to me. And so, yes, I hit them with a cast iron skillet, but this was after they called me a name. Or, yes, I was really frustrated one time and I kicked the family pet, but that was just because I didn't want to hit them. Okay. So they will confess these shortcomings, but talking or following. Okay. Now we're talking about the things that precede physical violence most of the time. So name calling and put downs, yelling and cursing, making verbal threats, or using body language that infers a threat. One example would be walking through the house. One young lady told me that her partner would walk through the house with this big butcher knife. Just walk through the house with the knife in their hand. Not talking to anybody, just obviously angry, and just walking around with a butcher knife. So what is one to think? What is one to think when their partner's walking through the house wielding a butcher knife? What do we think that means? Okay, so inferring a threat, which means they haven't said anything, but they're making it very, very clear that, okay, an inability or an unwillingness to compromise. So they want their way all of the time, and there's no compromise. Joseph, thank you all for hanging in there. I know the connection is kind of spotty. We're going to just keep going, okay? Subtle control. Insisting, for example, that you eat your food a certain way or that you dress a certain way. I experienced once on a date, my date telling me how I should eat my Chinese food, like what I should put on it. Guilt you into agreeing with them, okay? So, inability or unwillingness to compromise, subtle control, trying to tell you how to dress, trying to tell you what to eat, how to season it, what temperature you should eat it at, how much of it you should eat. And a lot of times these things are couched in I'm concerned about you, so I'm telling you for your own good. I'm telling you because I'm concerned about you, okay? Coercive control, pressuring you to do what you don't want to do. And this can include sexual interaction. This can include drug use or drinking, right? Especially if you have a history of substance abuse in your past, all right? So all of these things, they can know that you have a history of substance abuse, but they're trying to get you to smoke some weed. Sometimes have this perception that everyone is always against them, always. The reason that people don't agree with them is because they are against them, all right? And then oftentimes they'll try to pull you into this, it's you and me against the world thing, okay? This is Bonnie and Clyde mentality. They will deny their negative behavior sometimes. And this is a part of gaslighting, which is designed to get you to not trust what you were seeing with your own eyes. They'll cause you to question what you know you just experienced just by listening to them, okay? So an inability or unwillingness to compromise, subtle control, insisting that you eat a certain thing, season it a certain way, eat it at a certain temperature, eat a certain amount. Hey, Linda, telling you how to dress. And oftentimes they'll couch it in, well, you know, your cholesterol is high. Well, you know, you need to lose a little bit of weight. Well, you know, you have a history of heart disease in your family. Well, so it'll always be couched in concern for your well-being, which then makes you what? A difficult person, right? If you don't agree with them. So all roads lead back to trying to get you to comply and to submit to whatever it is they're telling you you should be feeling or thinking or doing, okay? They have a confrontational disposition. They're not able to talk things through and arrive at a conclusion in which compromise plays a role. Everyone is always against them. So you get that Bonnie and Clyde mentality. They'll try to pull you into together we can do anything. And everyone is against us, and your family doesn't understand me, and they don't understand you either, and I'm the only one that really gets you, okay? They are often suspicious and distrustful of you, okay? And it's not warranted. It's not warranted. Disregard for your feelings. Your feelings are not acknowledged. There's no importance attached to your feelings whatsoever. There's no acknowledgement of what you are feeling, okay? They may use sarcasm and hurtful words and demean you and act as though they're kidding or they're joking. And if you have a response to what's being said, then they will try to guilt you into feeling badly about, you know, speaking up for yourself or asking, why did you say that? Or that hurt my feelings or whatever. Oh, you can't take anything. Oh, I was just kidding. Oh, you're just too serious. Oh, you think too much of yourself, okay? They'll give you the silent treatment. What does the silent treatment look like? The silent treatment looks like we had a conversation or I made a request. Okay, this is the abuser. I made a request. We had a conversation. You had the audacity, the unmitigated gall to disagree with me or not just simply say yes because I don't know, it's me and I'm wonderful and I'm the center of the universe. You're just supposed to agree with me. And that didn't happen. So now I'm not speaking to you. I'm not accepting your calls. I'm not, if I live in the house with you, I'm not talking to you. I'm going to walk past you. I'm not going to say 2 words. I'm not saying good morning. I'm not saying good evening. I'm not saying how's your day. I'm not saying anything. I'm not talking to you. I want to punish you, okay? I want to punish you for not giving me what I am convinced I deserve, which is your undivided attention and your undying loyalty and your submission to whatever I say needs to happen, okay? So the silent treatment. And so a lot of times victims will think, well, that's not harmful. That's abusive. It's abusive because the relationship wasn't established by nobody talking to each other, right? I mean, there had to be some communication for the relationship to get established in the first place. And so when they withdraw that from you, that's abusive, okay? Lying to you, encouraging you, crushing you emotionally, then encouraging you again. So they'll build you up. They'll compliment you on something, and then they'll take it back. Oh, that's great. You got an A in your class. You're so smart and you're so brilliant. I have confidence in you. And then 5 minutes later, you are stupid and da-da-da-da-da. And I don't know how you got an A in that class and you probably cheated, whatever. And then they'll turn around and say, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know why I act like this. I love you. I love you. Okay, so build you up, right? Get you accustomed to hearing positive things, then crush you and break you down, and then build you back up again. And then the cycle continues. And every time this happens, the victim is being traumatized, which affects the actual physical makeup of your brain. Okay? So for more information regarding that, how the brain is rewired through traumatic experience, look for our Facebook Lives, okay? We've got them posted on social media. So lying, manipulating you, if you love me, you would X, Y, Z. Whatever it is that they're trying to get you to do. If you loved me, okay, then you would do this. You would do this, okay? They have a history of abusive actions in prior relationships. So oftentimes an abuser will tell you that they've been abusive in a prior relationship, but that they're working on it, or that they've been to a batterer's intervention program, or that they've been in therapy. And all of that is great, but hey, did it work? Did it work? And I submit to you, okay, and this is me putting my clinical hat back on for a minute. I submit to you that if you're involved with someone who has a history of being aggressive and violent and verbally demeaning to a partner, even if they do admit it to you, that you pay close attention, because even from a spiritual standpoint, we call it backsliding. We need to know what a person used to be before they say they got to know who Jesus was and turned their life over to God and started reading the Bible and quoting scripture all over the place, because that's who they're going to revert to. Okay? And the Bible says that spirit, that thing is going to come back with some company. So it's going to be worse than what was described to you. If they ever go back, it's going to be a hot mess. So really what you're asking yourself is, are you willing to take a chance that they won't go back to that? Are you willing to do that? And understand that you can't love them enough to prevent them from going back to that. That you can't be a good enough wife. You cannot be a good enough girlfriend. You cannot be a good enough boyfriend. You cannot be supportive enough. You can't write enough checks, give them enough credit cards, give them enough sex to prevent them from going back to who they were before they came to Christ, or before they became a spiritual entity, all right? If they choose to go back, okay? If the love of that spiritual entity is not enough to keep them from going back, all the sex and money and encouragement in the world is not enough to keep them from going back, okay? It's not enough. It's not enough, okay? So, lack of empathy or concern for others, when they're unconcerned about people around them, very self-centered, very myopic in that way, this is a red flag. When they interrogate you regarding your daily activities. And initially in a relationship, this can feel especially if you have a history of domestic violence already, either as a child or even as an adult, right? In a prior relationship, the constant interrogation, the constant questioning, the constant concern can feel like security. It can feel comforting. It can feel reassuring, when in fact it is stifling and the oxygen is slowly leaving the room and you're not even aware of it. You're not even aware of it, okay? When they purposely sabotage your friendships with others. So when they look for reasons that you should not be friends with others. You shouldn't be friends with them because they're too loose, or they do this, or they do that, okay? You want to pay attention to what is the actual objection. Is this a person that the abuser, that your partner views as being genuinely supportive of you? Because that could be the problem. That could be their problem. That's a support system, and they need for you to disconnect from that support system. Remember now that isolation is key. Isolation and deception are key in a domestic violence situation. Okay? Blaming, not accepting responsibility for their own actions is another red flag. Disregarding your boundaries, whether they're physical or financial, emotional or sexual. Disregarding your boundaries. You've established boundaries. You've said, this is what's important to me. This is what I'm okay with. This is what I'm not okay with. And they continually break those boundaries. They continually breach those boundaries. And then oftentimes they'll breach it and then they're kind of flippant about it or defensive about it, or trying to make you feel guilty because they've broken your boundary and you are now overreacting. Okay. And so I submit to you that if someone, first of all, if they break a boundary more than once, you weren't clear enough the first time. So you want to make sure that you are clear about what's okay and what's not okay. And then you want to understand that unless you enforce the boundary, you never establish the boundary. I'm going to say that again. Unless you enforce the boundary, you never established a boundary. You threatened to establish a boundary, but you never established a boundary. Because the standard is only a standard if it does not change. You don't raise the bar and then lower the bar, all right, and then try to hold people to the raised bar position, because it's too porous. It's too porous. It's not stable, and you're not committed to it, okay? And so if you want to be able to remain logical and rational about these situations, especially in new relationships, if you've established a boundary, okay, if you have said, I'm going to be abstinent because it violates my spiritual belief to be sexually active with someone that I'm not married to, okay, and then you get to kissing and carrying on, what kind of boundary did you set? You didn't set a boundary, okay? And like most humans, they're going to want to do the one that they want to do as opposed to the one that you said you wanted them to do, okay? Because now you're complicit. You're helping them to break the boundary that you said that you established, all right? I'll give you another example. For me, my expectation is that people will do what they say they're going to do. Now, I know everybody doesn't. And I don't try to make those who don't, I don't try to change them into people who do. It's my responsibility to discern which category you fall in. Are you full of it, or are you going to do what you say you're going to do? If you say you're going to do something, the expectation over here is that you produce it. And that if you can't, that you own that and say, you know what? I know I said X, Y, and Z, but I'm not going to be able to do X, Y, and Z. And this is what I can do instead. It's not complicated. If you can't do that, you don't have to worry about me, because I'm not fooling with you. I'm not. And we're not going to argue about it, because I may not even say anything to you. When I was 19, I may have felt a need to make sure you understood. You understand when I'm no longer interacting with you that you just talk and don't produce. That's it. There's nothing for us to fight about. There's nothing for us to argue about. Why go to war if there are no spoils, right? You aren't producing. So whatever I need that you said that you would provide, you're either unable or unwilling to do so. I need to accept that and keep it moving. Okay? And so often we'll get into this back and forth thing. And this is from a spiritual standpoint, now you're putting seed in the ground, because now you're investing emotionally in a situation that you have no control over and that you're not supposed to be able to control. We're not supposed to be able to control one another. Okay, and so this is how soul ties are established, when we start investing what we shouldn't invest in a place that is not healthy. Okay. Here are some additional red flags. One more thing that's a red flag that can inadvertently kind of stroke your ego, but you have to pay attention, because this is a popular one. Blaming or demeaning or demonizing their former partner. There's a difference between saying, I was in a relationship, if I'm a man, I was in a relationship with this woman, and, she cheated on me and it really hurt me, blah, 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 blah. But if they go too far over the top with she's this and she ain't that and she never was and blah, 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 and I can't stand the sound of her voice and I can't understand that there's some more of that where that came from. And it demonstrates an inability to accept what has happened and to move on in a healthy manner. And a person that cannot accept that it happened, okay? I'm not saying say that they deserved it. I'm not saying that say that it was right. But if they can accept responsibility for, number one, engaging in that situation in the first place. Number two, for missing some red flags of their own. Number three, for staying as long as they stayed. If you can accept those three things, you're able to disconnect in a healthy manner and move forward. If you're not able to do that, then this person is still putting seed in the ground in a dead situation, and fueling their own anger and fueling their own frustration. And what is the next logical outlet for that? It would be their current relationship, right? So a person who is constantly talking about their ex and how horrible they were and how much they can't stand them and they don't know why God's still letting them breathe and all of that, big red flag. Okay, big red flag. Okay, now here's some additional red flags. These are things, we're still talking about the abuser of wolf in sheep's clothing, and we've said at the very beginning that they're very, outgoing, charismatic. They might be very articulate, very smart, dress well, smell good, drive a pretty car, whatever. Or they may be between jobs, but they're well spoken and they are driven and they are helpful and they help old ladies across the street and they mow the elderly people's yards and do all these great things, right? Maybe their pastor, their bishop, or their apostle is vouching for them, okay? I would say that a recommendation is only as good as the person making the recommendation. Okay, so make sure you know who's recommending folk to you. And make sure you know that they share your standard. And make sure that they are more interested in you being safe than in them helping someone redeem themselves, okay, from their poor choices in the past. Make sure that their motivation is that you are safe and in a healthy and happy relationship, and not that this other person gets a second chance at your expense, okay? All right. So, another tremendous red flag is that they want to be with you all of the time. Hey, Kerwin. They want to be with you all the time. This charismatic person, this person that you find attractive, that smells good and has a great job and dresses well, they're very articulate and they laugh at your stupid jokes and they understand that you've been hurt in the past. They want to be with you all of the time. I mean, all of the time. This is not a figure of speech. They want to be with you all of the time. So if you're not at work, they want you with them. If you're not in church, they want you with them all of the time, around the clock. It feels good at first, especially if you've come from a situation in which that wasn't the case, where maybe there was a separation between you and your partner and they did not want to be around you, or you did not enjoy their company, or it was always tense. You didn't have anything in common to talk about, right? So having someone who wants to be with you all of the time feels amazing. It feels amazing, but it's very, very, very deceptive. Over time, if it's unhealthy, it starts to feel like suffocation. And if you step back and observe things, you realize that you're very rarely by yourself, and you're very rarely with anybody other than this partner. That over time, and it's very insidious, that you've kind of become isolated from family and friends, maybe people that you've known for years, who've not been a negative influence, who've only been a support, okay? If you say you have plans, for example, they may give you the silent treatment, which we talked about earlier, which is signaling their displeasure, right? They may suggest that they go along with you, right? They incorporate themselves in your plan. They don't wait for you to invite them. They invite themselves into your plan that you have with friends or family or whatever. Or they may show their disappointment or come up with a completely different alternative. A completely different alternative. Okay? One young lady was telling me that she had moved to another town, and the people from her church were coming to the area that she lived in now, and they were going to have a conference there. And so she said to her husband, well, you know, Bishop so-and-so is going to be here, and they're doing this conference, and I haven't seen them in a very long time, and why don't we go to the conference? Well, they didn't want to go to the conference, and they didn't want her to go to the conference either. And her response, and I'm proud of her, she said, well, I want to go to the conference, and you're more than welcome to come with me. Well, I don't know. I just think you need to be careful. So this is the other thing that they'll do. They'll try to throw shade at the support system. Anyone that they think might be able to shed some light, undergird, give some strength to, they're going to find something wrong with it. Well, you want to be real careful because, you know, everybody's not who they appear to be, and you want to be careful. And her response to him was this. Well, I'm thinking if you're that concerned about, you know, my spiritual safety, if I go, then I think you should come with me. He didn't want to go. And she went anyway, okay? And I was really proud of her for that, because really what that was an attempt to keep her from remembering who she is, right? To keep her from connecting with people from her past who had a healthy, positive impact on her spiritual growth and development. And what he didn't want was for her to figure that out, to remember who she actually was, as opposed to who he wanted her to believe that she was, okay? So that's one example of how controlling a wolf in sheep's clothing can be. Insecurity and jealousy is another indicator. They may quiz you about your friends, about your whereabouts. They may track you on social media, in creepy ways. They may surprise you at work, which at first might feel really romantic and amazing until it continues to happen, or until people start telling you that your partner is in the parking lot staring, okay? And again, they may insist that you disconnect from friends. They may find specific reasons that they don't like certain friends that you have and demand that you disconnect from them. They may constantly express concern that you are cheating, or that you will cheat, or that you will leave them, right? That you will leave them. And I think that an underlying reason for this is oftentimes they're cheating. Number one, oftentimes they're cheating. My grandmother and my mother used to say, a guilty conscience needs no accusing. So oftentimes people will accuse you of doing what they're actually doing. They know it's possible to do it because they're actually actively doing it themselves, okay? And they're concerned that you may be doing it as well. So there may be a concern that you will leave them. And oftentimes this is because they know that they're mistreating you. They know that they're mistreating you. And what they know is a healthy person would leave them, okay? So rather than falling into that trap, right, and taking that bait and trying to now convince them that you will never leave them, especially if you're a person of faith, now you've put your word out there, and so now you're kind of hamstrung because you are misappropriating scripture again. Misappropriating scripture. Are we to keep our word? Absolutely. But if we said a word that we shouldn't have said, we need to acknowledge that we should never have said it. Okay? All right? And back up and regroup. Okay? Controlling behaviors are presented in your partner as being concerned or worried, and I mentioned this earlier. They may state that You know that you're not able to make good choices. You know the last time you decided XYZ, what happened. You thought you could trust so and so and see how they treated you. Remember you needed blah blah blah, and you were there for them, but they're not there for you. And I'm the only one that's really there for you, and I'm the only one that actually gets you and understands you. Okay, so typically it will come back to that. They may want to jump into a relationship immediately. And I'm telling you, this is very, very common. Very common. You just met them 2 days ago, all right? And now every time you turn around, they're there. They're there, they're there, they're there, they're there. You don't even have time to attend to your life, right? At all, because they're always there. You're making readjustments in your life. Your sleep pattern is now off because of them. They're talking to you all night long, or they're wanting to go out or visit and spend time with you all the time, like all the time. And again, at first it feels very attentive, and then if you pay attention, you're not addressing things and attending to the things in your life that you should be attending to in your life. Okay, and so that's how you know that things are out of balance. They slowly pull you away from people that you care about and they care about you. They may make you late for work. They may offer to take you everywhere or drive you everywhere, anywhere you want to go. Hey, Prophet Gay now. Anywhere you want to go, they're willing to drive you. You have your own personal chauffeur. What is wrong with that? You are never alone. They know every single place that you go. Every single person that you interact with. Okay, so I submit to you that that's suspect. You need to pay attention to that as well. They may make you late for work or for school so that you jeopardize your employment or jeopardize your education, so that you may fail the class, you may withdraw from school, you may get fired from your job if you're late often enough, right? Or if you're distracted. They may call you all the time at work and you're not supposed to get phone calls. They may text you or insist that you respond to texts and you're not supposed to have your phone out at work. Things like that. Things that will jeopardize your ability to maintain your own independence. Okay. And again, this can be the man or the woman that is the wolf in sheep's clothing. They fail to accept responsibility for anything going on in their lives, right? And it's always someone else's fault. And if you hang around long enough, it's going to be your fault. Everything will be your fault. Anything that's not going the way that they would like for it to go will be viewed as your fault. Okay? Everything is about them being specifically targeted by the universe, by absolutely everybody. Everybody's against them. You're the only one that they trust. Okay? And if you hear that, then that is suspect as well. Okay? They may be disrespectful or cruel to others, especially children or animals or vulnerable populations, the elderly. Disrespectful to their mother, disrespectful to their grandmother, disrespectful to people just in general. And maybe they're really, really nice and sweet with you. But if they treat other people that way, it's just a matter of time before you start to receive that as well. Okay, this is all part of love bombing. Okay, and again, we talked about if they have an abusive past. Most times they won't own it, but if they do, they'll blame their partner. They'll say that he or she was crazy. Okay, that's a red flag. First of all, it's disrespectful. If a person actually has a mental illness, then you can say they have a mental illness or whatever. But when you start denigrating and calling names, it's more a reflection on the character of the person who's doing the describing than the character of the person that they are describing. Okay, and the reality of it is, if you are in a domestic violence situation, or if I am in a domestic violence situation, I'm in it because I'm remained in it. I'm in it because I engaged in it in the first place. So there's some responsibility, right, that we need to assume for finding ourselves there in the first place. And then we need to assume responsibility for finding our way out safely, okay? They may have mood swings. They may ask you this: don't you trust me? Don't you trust me? Why are you so distrustful? I thought you trusted me. I thought you loved me, Don't you trust my judgment? I'm just looking out for you. Okay, so anything that takes responsibility away from you as an adult, as a rationally thinking human being, that removes or lifts responsibility from you for making choices in your life and the direction that your life takes is manipulation. And it's a tremendous red flag, okay? If they put you down, criticize your attire, might ask you, who are you dressing for? Who are you wearing that for? You look like this, you look like that. You're too big to wear that. You're too skinny to wear that. There's some negative comment about your attire and how you look at it. And then typically there's an accusation that you're dressing that way for someone else that's not them. And the hope is that you will then invest a lot of energy from a spiritual standpoint and an emotional standpoint in convincing them that this is not true, despite the fact that you're not doing anything that they just accused you of, okay? There's oftentimes a control with a threat of violence. So maybe they haven't hit you yet. Maybe she hasn't hit you yet. Maybe he hasn't hit you yet. But there's this threat of violence. There's this sense that violence could occur, okay? If they are arguing with you while you're in a vehicle and they are driving and they start to drive erratically, they're changing lanes and they're not using their signal, they're cutting people off and just, driving too fast, that is a veiled threat. That's a veiled threat. They don't have to say anything to you. What you understand is they are in control of my life right now. And if I even keep my life right now, because they can cause an accident and kill us in this vehicle, okay? And so that's a red flag. If they throw things, they go on a verbal rampage, they're punching the wall. Or maybe they punch or hit the wall near you. They didn't actually hit you. They're throwing your things around. They're punching the wall. They're threatening. As I told you, the other young lady shared with me, they're walking through the house with a gun, brandishing a gun, or holding a knife. They haven't said anything, but they don't need to say anything because the nonverbals, right, are communicating quite clearly what could potentially happen, okay? At some point in their life, an abuser, a wolf in sheep's clothing, whether they be male or female, whether they be a teacher, a psychiatrist, a psychologist, a therapist, an attorney, a prosecuting attorney, a first responder, a janitor, a church mother, a deacon, an apostle, a bishop, or whoever. At some point in their life, and a person who is abusive has learned to get their needs met, right, at the expense of others. That's what they've learned. And it has worked for them to an extent, or they wouldn't continue to do it. Which means that for a time they got away with it. Now maybe the victim then got away from them, and then they found a new victim, because that's what abusers do, okay? You won't find them outside of a relationship too often because they need the supply of another human being. They need to be able to, they're like a parasite. They need a host to live off of, okay? There's nothing that you can do to change it. You cannot change this. You cannot anoint them with enough oil. You cannot speak in enough tongues. You cannot quote enough scripture, okay? They are damaged. Their brain is damaged. Their brain has been rewired, especially if they have a history of abuse themselves. And there is nothing you can do about it. And I submit to you that if they've already done any of these things that we've talked about, if they're displaying any of these behaviors, they've already decided that you're going to be a victim. That is your role in this play, this skit that they have going on called life, okay? That's your role. The role that you've been assigned is that of victim. You are not the one that's going to change them. The only individuals that have any chance at all of impacting an abuser is someone who has not fallen prey to them, period. Period. Has not fallen prey to them. Does not need their approval. Does not need to be comforted by them, okay? If you have fallen victim to them, you cannot help them. You cannot. All right? And because they've been allowed to walk all over you, they can't hear you nor can they respect you. So we've been talking about the abuser, right? In terms of domestic violence and how they are a wolf in sheep's clothing. Remember that they come across as charming and engaging and bright, and they laugh at your stupid jokes, and they think you're amazing, and they don't know how your ex could have been so stupid, and how could they have not valued you, and etc., etc., etc. Okay? That's typically how it starts. Then they rush you. Now they want to be in a relationship, and can we decide what this is? And they may want you to marry them after about 5 minutes. Depending on how starved you are from previous relationships, that may be flattering to you. Please, 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 don't be so flattered that you're not paying attention. Okay? So understand that. Understand, too, that if you have found yourself in a domestic violence situation, it doesn't benefit you to berate yourself or denigrate yourself and talk to yourself negatively and beat yourself up about the fact, how did I get into this? I knew better, blah, blah, blah. I should have listened to my friends. I should have listened to my gut. I should have listened to the Lord, but then blah. Don't do that. It's a complete waste of time and energy, okay? Acknowledge that you're in it. Accept that that's what it is, okay? Develop a safety plan and extricate yourself, okay? We have this false sense of spirituality when we feel like if we talk badly enough about ourselves, then we're being humble. No, we're not. No, we're not. We're playing into the enemy's plan to further beat ourselves down. And if you're in a domestic violence situation, you've been crushed enough and you need to start building yourself up, okay? This is Apostle Cheryl Richardson, and we are mandated to raise awareness regarding domestic violence. We are mandated to help people to get free. We encourage you to call the domestic violence hotline. You can inbox us. You can reach out to domesticshelters.org. There are many groups on Facebook that are committed to standing up against domestic violence. Stand Up Survivor is one of them. Against All Odds with Valerie Simon is another. There are many, 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 many groups out there, organizations out there, advocates out there. So find an advocate in your local area. Develop a safety plan, please. If you're in an abusive situation, or if you think you are, develop a safety plan. All right? If you are in one and you are actively trying to exit it, you need a safety plan. Once you exit it, you need a safety plan. And remember that 30 to 90 days on average, that's average. So it could be less than that, it could be more than that. 30 to 90 days, right? After you have left an abusive situation is a very dangerous time for the victim. Very dangerous time. When you seek child support, very dangerous time. When you seek legal action, very dangerous time. You need a safety plan. If you've been gone away from your abuser for 3, 4, 5 years or even longer, you still need a safety plan. Because if they are triggered in their own life, they may very well come looking for you. They may blame you. If this hadn't happened with so-and-so, I would never have been in this other situation. You understand what I'm saying? So you want to always be prepared. Am I saying that you should walk through life and be fearful? Absolutely not. No. That's not what God intends. But we are to use wisdom, right? And so you want to be prepared for whatever may happen. In the military, I learned that you prepare for your most stringent tasking. The absolute worst thing that you think could happen, prepare for that. And if anything other than that happens, you're ready. And if that happens, you're also ready. All right? This is Apostle Cheryl L. Richardson. We encourage you to partner with us. We put our Cash App and PayPal information at the top of the page. We are now accepting global invitations to raise awareness regarding domestic violence. And we have engagements that we are in the process of scheduling in Solomon Islands, which is in the South Pacific, and also in Kenya, and a few other locations. And certainly we're available here in the United States. We're willing to travel and to train your ministry teams and to train them so that they know what to look for in your congregations and how to encourage and strengthen and undergird abuse victims, how to recognize them and how to best support them, what to say and what not to say. All right. So we've got a lot of things that we're working on right now. We're excited about what God is doing. We are saddened by the influx of abuse victims that are being murdered and losing their lives. And it's just we need wisdom. We need to know what to do when people don't know what to do. And so we ask that you can, at the very least, you can share this video, share it, do a watch party, whatever, so that people can learn and educate themselves. And even if you are not an abuse victim yourself, okay, even if you're not, someone around you is. Someone around you is. Someone is. It's that prevalent. It is that prevalent. It is a silent epidemic within the church, across denominational lines, across socioeconomic lines, across racial lines, and all these other categories that we use to distinguish ourselves from one another. Domestic violence is a tremendous problem globally. And I'll leave you with this thought. According to the United Nations, they did a study in 2017, and they made this declaration that the deadliest place for a woman globally, worldwide, is in her own home. Is in her own home. This is Apostle Cheryl L. Richardson. I thank you for joining us on today. I encourage you to share and to partner with us, and we'll be back next week with another Facebook Live discussion regarding domestic violence and how we can gain dominion over it. We have a closed Facebook group. It is faith-based. It's called Dominion Over Domestic Violence. It's a safe place. We don't want it to grow to thousands because we want to keep the intimacy, and we want to make sure that we can ensure the safety of everyone who belongs to the group. All right. And we also, from a clinical perspective, don't want to just continually regurgitate the negative. We want to build people up and to help them to come up out of these situations and not get stuck in this pattern of just rehearsing their pain. All right. Blessings to you. We'll be back next week.